Hi everyone, Misilla here, Learn to Grow. I hope that you're having a great day. So today I'm going to take you on a garden tour to show you what's going on as we transition to fall. And I'll also have some tips along the way. And I hope that you enjoy it. All right, we're going to start up here from the deck. We also have some plants in containers that we grow up here. So we'll just take a walk across here and then I'll show you the other side of the garden. So we have some fig trees in 40-gallon pots. This raised bed here is planted with some potatoes. Excuse my wheelbarrow full of yard debris. You can see the pumpkin patch all the way down there behind that tree stump. Some beautiful dahlias. And I want to show you this container garden. This is an herb and pollinator garden that I planted back in May, so about 2.5 months ago, doing really well. So if you're interested in growing herbs in containers, I will link the video below. This is hibiscus. It's not cold hardy here, so I overwinter this indoors in the fall and winter. So that's how it looks like from up here. Our 1,000-head kale plants are doing really well. They're really tall. Just keep walking so you can see the view from up here. So as you can see, we plant a lot of flowers. That way we can invite pollinators to the garden. They pollinate our crops, so that increases yields. So over on the side are a couple of old cedar raised beds made out of fence boards, which will be replaced this fall with the raised metal beds. And we have some random things growing in here, so when we head down, I'll give you a closer look. This is gardenia, some strawberries in pots. This is my hanging basket of petunia that I need to hang back up. And a couple of loofah plants. No fruits yet. I started late this year. I had to start a second time because the squirrels dug up the seedlings, so not sure if I'm going to get anything. But loofah takes a while to mature. I think about 100 days, and you need plenty of warm days for them to set fruit and produce. So we'll see what happens. And this is my Meyer lemon tree in the pot. It's pretty small. It's only about 3 feet tall, and then we've gotten fruit from it before as well. And a couple of let's see, lemon saplings. These were started from seeds. This one too, 3 years ago, that my mom planted. So those are kind of fun to grow, although they are not hardy, so I have to bring them indoors as well. Here is the other side of the garden. This is our miniature orchard. We have some apple, pear trees, blueberry shrubs, a couple of rhubarb patches, and we also have a rock bed over there with some flowers and perennial plants, and another flower patch right here, as well as this one. Now, a lot of us have been dealing with heat waves, so I just kind of let some of the grass and plants go here because I'm trying to conserve water. So it's been a pretty crazy season, but the other plants are doing okay. All right, here we go. Here are the fig trees in pots. These were planted late winter 2019, and they were started from young saplings, which were the suckers or shoots that grew from the mother plant or mother tree from our relative's homestead. So these are on their 3rd year, and fig trees can start to bear fruit between 2 to 5 years, depending on growing conditions and variety. So hopefully we'll get some fruits next season. And on this little raised bed here were the elephant garlic that we harvested already. I do have some red-veined sorrel. Let me zoom in so you can see. These are perennials, very hardy. And remember, perennials return every year as long as they are hardy to your zone or climate. Sorrel has a tangy flavor, so they're great in salads or soups. So I'm going to step back this way so we can go on this side. So this is the potato bed. Harvested the first plantings that were planted back in April. We had some issues with rodents, so I went ahead and pulled the plants out, and we had a few potatoes. So what I need to do for this bed is place a chicken wire underneath before I refill it back up. So it's something I will do before next season starts. Here is a beautiful view, and we'll just keep walking along this way. And I'll go over the perennial herbs and flowers as we walk along. So let's take a look over here first. This is Vego Garden sage. Beautiful wide leaves, and you would use this like you would with any garden sage. And this one's rosemary. And we have a lavender in a pot along with some Aluzinc. This one is chrysanthemum. I have a volunteer kale plant right there. And some petunias. Over in this bed are some romaine lettuce seedlings that were sown about 3 weeks ago. I went ahead and sowed some more on this side yesterday. And also on the opposite side. And we have some shallots that are ready to be harvested. Usually when the foliage dies back like that, similar to garlic, that's when I harvest the shallots. You can see here, beautiful. So I'll get to those later. And this one here is a dinner plate Dahlia. It's a yellow one, very pretty. More dahlias over here, and the bubblegum pink over there. Then we have some snapdragons in between and some dwarf dahlias as well. So let's go over to this bed here. Have some yarrow. This is a medicinal herb. This one's really pretty. Different colors there. Over on this side are some bunching onions or Welsh onions, which are actually cold hardy perennials as long as they are hardy to your zone or climate. And this variety is called Redbeard and has beautiful purple stalks. So I cannot wait to harvest these. And these were started back in January. They were winter sown in those plastic bottles. Another dahlia. That was really pretty. And dahlia is actually hardy to our climate. We're in zone 8B, so I don't always dig up the tubers. Sometimes I just leave them as is, and sometimes I do divide them every once in a while. Some bush beans and a couple of young summer squash. It looks like something's been digging in here. These are multiplier onions. So these are small bulbing onions, which are also perennials. We love to grow perennial crops. And then over on this side in the ground are the Egyptian walking onions. So the walking onions proliferate by growing these top sets. And these are essentially the bulbils or bulblets that you can propagate. So the reason why they are called Egyptian walking onions is that when they fall over, they get top heavy, they fall over, and these get buried into the ground, and then they grow into more plants. But they also propagate by the lateral growths or new shoots. I think this is one of the more mature bulbs. I just want to show you how big they are. So they're not that big. But what's nice about growing perennial onions is that you don't have to plant them every year. So you just take what you need and you can leave a few of these mother plants or bulbs so that way it can keep propagating. Let's bury this back up. Now, walking onions are also very hardy, all the way down to zone 3 or about negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so back on our path here, this is Ganera. It is mainly an ornamental plant, young banana plant my auntie gave me, and also this wisteria. So let's take a look over here on this raised bed. This is a dahlia, and I went ahead and actually pulled out the old crops. We planted lettuce in here earlier this year, and these are chives in the middle. I believe this is blue vervain, and I also sowed some, I believe, radish on this side over here of the bed, and some lettuce and carrots, so on the sides of the bed here. These ones here are Seakale, and these are actually a cold hardy perennial. This is native to Europe. It looks like something's been munching on it, and I'll show you the larger ones that I have growing in the ground on the other side of the garden. Now this little guy here is a micro dwarf tomato volunteer. I did not plant any this year, but I grew them last year, and so some of the fruits might have fallen in the ground. So I also sowed some more lettuce on this side. This one is a beautiful herb. It is called spike thyme, and Zatar Gardens shared some seeds with me last season, and so I winter sowed these as well. So over in this trellis are a couple of grapevines. This one is the red one, and this is the green one. So these are supposed to be champagne grapes, although my auntie couldn't remember the variety. But I did cut them back all the way to help them regenerate. And we have all these new vines. So next year we should get some fruits. So I want to show you these nasturtiums down here. These are the vining ones, and I didn't sow any this year. I had some that self-seeded last year. What's nice about volunteer plants is that they are sometimes more prolific and hardy. Once you grow them in your climate and you let them seed and you collect those seeds, those plants are more likely adapted to your climate and will perform better for you. And sometimes they're even more resistant to diseases or pests. Also, I've got some leeks over here in the middle that have flowered. So leek is another perennial crop. They will actually multiply at the base and put out new shoots or new plants near the bulb. And of course, they will go to seed, and you can also collect the seeds and plant them. That's a pretty view right there. All right, let's go this way. These are dwarf dahlias. It is called strawberry lemonade. We have a few plants in pots. This is another dahlia. I can't remember the color in this one here. This one is lemon balm. This is goji berry. It is in the same family as tomatoes and potatoes, Solanaceae. And it's got an orange-red fruit, edible, but also the leaves are also edible. They are succulent, a little tangy. I think they're pretty good. But always make sure to do your own research before you eat something that you are unfamiliar with. I love this ground cover. This is called Iron Cross. It is a sorrel variety. Flowers are so pretty. They're pink. And it looks like the flat leaf parsley is going to seed. It's a biennial plant, meaning that it'll usually go to seed, flower and go to seed on its second season. And got some more chives along this row here. Curly parsley. This one is French tarragon. And we have all of our mints in pots. If you decide to grow any of the mint varieties, make sure to keep them contained. They will spread or propagate via rhizomes or runners, and they can take over your garden. Then we have more mints on this side as well. We have 14 varieties of mints, so I'll save that for another video, and we'll go over them next time. This one is garden sage. This one is a volunteer Russian kale, echinacea or coneflower, and then our 1,000-head kale. These two were actually volunteers, so the old 1,000-head kale plant self-seeded, and I had a whole bed of them, except we ate the young seedlings, and I saved a couple and planted them into this bed, and they can get pretty big. They grow to about 5 feet tall, except this one is taller and about 3 to 4 feet spread. They tend to grow multiple branches, so side branches, and the leaves are huge. They can get up to 36 inches long and about 15 to 18 inches wide. So depending on growing conditions, they can really get big and be productive for you. I'll show you a picture on how it looked like a couple of weeks ago. So I want to show you a couple of the ground covers that we grow, and they're actually herbs. This is creeping thyme, and it's wonderful because they attract pollinators. And over here is Corsican mint, which is also edible. It smells so good, but we just grow this as a ground cover. And it blocks the weeds, so it's nice. So this is going to be spreading throughout the garden. There's more over there. So I'm going to back up a little bit over here and go towards my left so I can show you the rest of the herbs. So most of these herbs are the Mediterranean and also more woody varieties, which I plant together. So if you decide to grow herbs, try to plant them or group them with similar soil, sunlight, and moisture needs. So all of these are pretty much drought tolerant. Got oregano, thyme, I think this is lemon thyme, and this is English thyme. This is winter savory, lemon balm, this is marjoram, lavage. So even though lavage is not really a woody herb, it's more of an herbaceous herb, it is actually drought tolerant once established. Then we have a couple of lavenders, yarrow, and I believe I have purple sage in there somewhere. So I need to cut back some of these herbs to allow better sunlight and airflow so they don't get diseased. Now, even though these herbs are known to be drought tolerant, they still need time to establish and must be watered regularly. Since I'm growing these into this raised bed, they are usually watered about every 7 to 10 days, except when it rains and during the cool seasons. These herbs here are growing in the ground right behind this tall raised bed. The one to the left is oregano, which I allowed to blossom for the pollinators, and the honeybees are loving it. The one right here to the right is lemon balm, which I usually do not allow to flower because it can spread and take over your garden. So you can prune back your lemon balm in the summer and again before fall, maybe about 6 weeks before your first frost date. Also, lemon balm is pretty resilient and you can actually prune the stalks back about 1/3 of the plant, sometimes even more, and they will regrow back. This one here is pineapple sage, which is hardy to around zone 8 to 7 with some protections. So just make sure to mulch the base of the plant with about 3 to 4 inches of mulch, but don't mulch over the crown. That'll protect its roots. Also, depending on varieties, some of the pineapple sage plants can get well over 6 feet tall. This one gets over 6 feet tall, and the hummingbirds love the bright red flowers, which are trumpet shaped. And this smells so good. This is good in tea, also just to flavor your water. Now this rosemary here is the Tuscan rosemary variety, and this is a well-established plant. It is over 5 feet tall. It's really wide, so you can see I need to do some pruning, but we've had this plant for I'm guessing about 8 years now. So I'm going to back up a little bit here so I can show you this beautiful plant. This is called Himalayan honeysuckle or chocolate berry. The Latin name is Leucistheria formosa. It is a beautiful plant. The foliage is beautiful. Look at that. And the tiny berries taste between toffee, coffee, some say burnt sugar, but they're pretty good. They're not very sweet, but they are very tasty. So when they're ripe, they look like this, dark brown. Some of them are actually starting to dry out. The flowers are beautiful. They're a pinkish white flowers, which attracts bees. I've seen lots of bees in this summer. This plant is native to the Himalayas and southwestern China, and it is known to be hardy to USDA zones 7 to 10 or down to about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it does have an invasive habit, so I planted it in a pot, and I have another young one that I started from one of the canes, which is also growing in a pot. This pot is 10 gallons, but it looks like it's outgrowing it, so I'm going to be planting this into a bigger container this fall, or even in one of these small raised beds or the round ones over there. So I think that would be perfect, so it'll be contained. All right, so now we'll go over this area, but let's go over here first. I've got some plants in containers. Started some dwarf peas about 3.5 weeks ago. There's more over here. Planted along with some late summer squash, so we'll see if we'll get any fruit from that one. And some tomatoes. These are the ox heart tomato. They are so pretty. Look at that. Look at this shape. These are also the same type of tomatoes. So these were planted late, so I had a late start this year. It's been so busy. And some carnivorous plants. So it looks like I need to pot up these into bigger containers. These are really fun. The kids love them. I love them. This is really neat looking. This one is called Cobra Lily. Isn't that neat? There's the cabbage seedlings. This is Yacon. So this again is grown for the edible tubers. Now if you live in a mild or warm climate, you can grow this as a perennial. So it's hardy to around zone 8 with some protection. And probably a good idea to mulch the tubers or the crown in the winter. So we have ginger over here and turmeric. These are not hardy to our zone. Again, I'm in zone 8B, so I usually bring them indoors to overwinter. These are cold hardy berry canes that I started in pots back in springtime. They were pretty tiny. They were only about maybe a foot tall. They are at least 3 to 4 feet tall now. These two here are currants. I think one is pink and one is red. And this one here is gooseberry. What's great about these berry canes is that they are very cold hardy all the way down to USDA zones 3 to 8. I believe the minimum chilling hours for these canes are at least 1,000 to 2,000 hours depending on variety. We have some summer squash growing in these 40-gallon fabric pots. And over here are some Jerusalem artichokes in containers, in fabric containers as well, 40 gallons. These are also related to the sunflower, and we grow them for the edible tubers. Now, if you've never had the tubers before, make sure not to eat too many all at once. They contain inulin, which is an indigestible fiber, which can make you gassy. So be careful. And also, Jerusalem artichoke is a perennial to zones 3 to 8. So I usually just leave some of the tubers to overwinter in the ground. I bury them at least 6 inches deep. And over here, we have some leafy greens. These are radicchio. It's supposed to be the red Verona, although it's more green right now, probably because it's warm, but it gets purplish red when the weather cools. And then we have some Swiss chard here and also on this side. Now these were volunteers from last year's crop, so I didn't even sow any Swiss chard this year. I just allowed a few to flower and some of the seeds fell on the ground, and I pulled this out throughout the garden, so they were growing in different spots. So that's the only thing about allowing some of your plants to self-sow is make sure that you can maintain the area. And over here are some peppers. This is one of the ones I overwintered last year, and it's still kind of small. It didn't do that well, but I am getting some fruits. Look at that. This is a hatch chili pepper. I cannot remember the variety on this one. And this is called fish pepper that my friend Monica gave me. It was a seedling. It's still pretty small. Hopefully we'll get some fruits before fall. And over down here, actually some wild strawberries that I'm still trying to propagate. These might be alpine strawberries. Some tomatoes in pots. These ones are early girl tomatoes. So over on this side are random plants that I still need to plant in larger containers or into the garden. These here are horseradiches that I grew from store-bought roots. So I'm really excited that they are actually growing, but I need to put them in one of the raised beds. This one here is bronze fennel. It is actually a perennial type, and it's hardy to zone 5 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is, oh, avocado. These are both avocado saplings, and they are not hardy to my climate, but I found a seed in a compost that was sprouting, and this is that one. And then another seed that the kids wanted to plant, so we'll just grow these as houseplants. And some Italian fine peppers, still pretty small, so these will be taken indoors to continue to grow. Oh, this one has a big one already, but the plant is so small, so I need to transplant these into bigger containers and allow them to establish and mature. These are multiplier onions. These are still pretty young, but these are great because another perennial onions. that you can grow year round. Just leave them in the ground and they'll multiply and produce more small onion bulbs for you. These are bay leaf starts. These were started from cuttings. Chocolate berry cuttings or Himalayan honeysuckle. That's what I showed you earlier. These ones are cosmic kale cuttings, which I think already rooted. I have the more mature plants on the other side of the garden, which I'll take you to next. So what's great about this kale type is that it is a perennial. So that means it'll produce year round as long as it is hardy to your zone or climate. This is hardy, like most kales, to around 10-15 degrees Fahrenheit. These are the bunching onions or green onions that I just replant from the store-bought ones. So I've had some of these for at least 3 to 4 years, and sometimes they produce seeds. So a lot of them fell off already. Now from experience, some of the green onions that you buy at the store that you regrow may not always produce seeds. It really just depends on the variety or if they are some kind of a hybrid. Remember, onions or most onions are biennial, which means that they'll go to seed the following year. We have several varieties of plants growing on this side of the house. I'll just go down the row. These are cucamelons. They are so cute. They look like miniature watermelons. So they taste like cucumbers. Little tiny, very prolific. Okay, there's fruits everywhere. We've been harvesting these daily. So what's great about cucamelon is that it is a perennial if you live in a warm climate. So it's not hardy to our zone. I believe it's only hardy to around zone 9 and up. So as the plants mature, they develop tubers. And you can leave them in the ground or dig them up and bring them indoors to overwinter if you live in a cooler climate. So in this container here is Caroline raspberry. And this will be going into the raised beds this fall. This is fall gold raspberry. These were started last spring. They were very tiny, but they did really well. This is one of the chocolate berry cuttings that I started last year, so it's getting big. Young fig tree started from one of the shoots. These are all grape cuttings that I started, I think back in May. I actually have a video on this and I just didn't get a chance to uploading it yet. But I think there are at least maybe 17 cuttings in there and they all rooted. And I kind of made a mistake and did not separate the red and green grapes. But I guess we'll just find out which ones they are when we plant them. But I'm going to have to give some away. There's just too many of them. This is a rose plant that I dug up, which I'm relocating. Pear tree. This one's apple. It looks like it's struggling. I need to water it right away. This is plum. So these are the temporary containers. They're in 40-gallon containers right now, but I need to either pot them up in a bigger container or put them in the ground. This bed is planted with potatoes that I'll be harvesting this fall. So we are in the backyard again. Just want to show you this bay leaf tree. But please excuse all the ivy growing through the fence. I actually just pruned those off about 3 weeks ago and they just keep growing over the fence and through the fence. But anyway, this is a bay leaf tree and really impressed with the growth. I'm thinking it's about 10-11 feet tall now. But this was started from a cutting 4 summers ago. So it was about 6 inches tall when I planted it in the ground. But I'm just so impressed and so amazed with how quick it is growing. It grows really slow at first. During the first 2 years, it stayed pretty small. But once it was established, it just took off. So very excited. So kind of weedy around this area. I need to do a lot of pruning. A lot of the herbs are overgrown. These are some carrots. I think they're ready. I just haven't gotten around to harvesting them yet. Some of them are still kind of small. Other random stuff in here. This is Oxalis tuberosa. So we are growing these for the edible tubers. They're kind of like small potatoes, although they are very pretty. Some are yellow, red, cream, little tart, and actually the whole plant is edible. So just like with sorrel, the leaves are edible, the stems, and of course the tubers. Just be careful with the leaves because they do contain oxalic acid, and you don't want to eat too many all at once, so always do your own research. These are runner beans. This is painted lady runner bean. Look how pretty the flowers are. Hummingbirds love the flowers. And then these are the raspberry canes. They are just towering. And they're planted right behind this raised bed. On the other side. This is orange mint. Asparagus. More asparagus. So I let this fern out because these are newly planted this past spring, so I won't be harvesting till next year or even the year after. Just want them to establish first. These are more Oxalis tuberosa. So going to get some more edible tubers from those this fall. Got some more chard volunteers. So these ones grew from the chard that went to seed on this bed last summer. So I collected most of the seeds, but of course they always fall off. So I just kind of let them be, and they did okay. I never fed these, and I never really watered them, and they did fine. So remember, when you are allowing your plants to seed and even self-seed, they become really resilient. Okay, so on this bed are some more perennials. So these ones are called Kaleidoscopic Kale or Homesteaders Kale Grex. And I will link it below, so if you're interested in these perennial kales, you can start them from seeds. So they should be spaced more than a foot apart. They're spaced about 18 inches apart right now, but they can get to about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. And each one looks a little different from the other. So these are a hybrid. It's a really interesting mix. And here are the 1,000-head kale again. I hope these stick around and grow as perennials. Sometimes you just never know. They adapt, and sometimes they just keep growing. So we have more kale over here. That one's Russian kale. More Russian kale over here, and a 1,000-head kale. These are also volunteers from last year's crop that's self-seeded. Let's walk over here, give you a better look at the rest. So got some bush beans on our front here, just right beneath the cosmic kale. So these are the bigger or more mature plants. These are the perennial kale as well. And again, make sure to check out the links below. So if you're interested in any of the plants that I am growing, really love growing perennial crops because once you plant them and they are established, they'll produce for you for many years. So this dinosaur or lacinato kale is actually a biennial, so meaning that it'll go to seed the following year. Now, it didn't this year. I actually cut back all of them in this row, except this one came back. I'll show you. So this is where I made the cut. So I made the cut right there, and I usually leave the roots in the ground so we don't disturb the soil and the microbes. And then it started to put out these new shoots, and it regrew into a new plant. So it's about 2.5 feet tall, and it's looking healthy, and it didn't go to flower. So I think it's going to stick around for another year, so maybe it'll end up being a perennial kale, so you never know. Well, back here is a yuzu citrus. This is a cold hardy citrus variety, and I believe it's hardy to around 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Here are the raspberry canes. So let me step back a little bit here so you can see them. Looks like I'm going to have to cut these back next spring. And here are the perennial tree collards. I showed you this before last week when I put together this support system. Purple tree collard, merit, and more purple tree collard. And over here is a fig tree. So this is like a miniature food forest, I guess. Oh, you know, I forgot to show you. These are Seakale. So this is also a perennial kale. It's native to Europe. Here's another one. So I just noticed some growths on this fig tree. So these lower growths here will develop into a young sapling, and then you can separate that maybe in a couple of years or so. Lastly, the pumpkin patch. So we also have some volunteer potato plants, as you can see right in the front. There's some Malva sylvestris. Those are edible flowers. The seeds are edible as well. And we also have some zucchini interplanted within the pumpkins. So I think there's a couple of zucchini here. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's getting big. There's a small one. Maybe I'll just let this one be and allow it to get big for zucchini bread. But usually you want to harvest your zucchini squashes when they're about 7 to 8 inches tall. If you leave them on a plant, your plant will slow production of more fruits. So it's best to harvest them. I might actually just harvest this soon, but there's a couple of baby ones that are coming up. Give you a better view. So this is just 8 weeks from sowing the seeds. So impressed with how they are doing. More zucchini. This other baby pumpkin over there. So hopefully we'll get some nice pumpkins this October. So this is the front garden where I planted some Roma tomatoes. And I actually allowed these bush beans to go to seed so I can harvest the seeds. Some gold tomatoes growing along this trellis. So we've been harvesting them daily. So sweet. This is our favorite cherry tomatoes. It is an indeterminate variety. It's growing so tall. So if you allow your indeterminate tomatoes to grow, they'll keep growing. I've heard some people grow them to about 12 feet tall, even taller. So a lot of green ones still, but they should ripen up soon. Now, since Sun Gold is a hybrid variety, if you save the seeds, they most likely will not breed true. You might not get the exact same sweet cherry tomatoes. So it's best to plant them or buy the starts, or unless you can find seeds that are stable or F1 hybrid seeds. Hey guys, so I actually had to finish the video today because I ran out of daylight the other day, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me. And also just want to remind you that my book 4-Season Food Gardening is going to be released February 8, 2022, but it's available for pre-order. And here is the cover, and I will link it below in the description box of the video. Thank you so much for your support, and happy gardening.